Sure, a lot of these immigrants, if you get them there and there's not welfare, they are hardworking. But there are criminal gangs that feed off of them and organize them. And now government, mainly liberals, are doing this all over the world. This is their Cloward and Piven checkmate. This is how they bring the folks in to socialize and then bring down the country. We're going to play that video with audio as a shocked Kiwi videotapes it, who was visiting France, about to go under the tunnel. And it is just shocking, shocking what's going on. Joe Biggs is going out to Hawaii, one of our hardest working reporters. He wanted to take a vacation / working vacation. And I said, absolutely, please go. But he's going to be documenting the giant immigrant shanty towns that are there now lining major highways, and how they just let the illegals come in off boats and ships now, to the point of locals, and I mean the actual Hawaiians, are freaking out about what's going on. And it's one thing if the invaders bring, running water and television. You could still say that's bad if it's not your culture. But what when people just bring disease and poverty? And again, people say, well, why don't you support the globalists and their sterilization program? I want to industrialize the third world. I want to build these people up. Once you industrialize, you have on average 1.4 children within one generation. The globalist on record on the Royal Commission put out in 49 out of England had a plan to not develop the third world, create a third world bloom in population, and then use those populations to keep the third world destabilized so they could extract their resources easily, and then use those third world populations as a weapon to bring down the West. This is a military operation. And the globalists put a human face on these migrants, on these immigrants. You bet they're humans. Just like if I was getting off the Titanic and I was in the boat with my wife and my kids, and the water was already coming up to the very edge of the boat and splashing over, and we're bailing, and there's 50 people right off our bow begging to be let on in the freezing water. If you let them climb over, the ship is going to go under. It's going, and that's the plan. It's Cloward and Piven. In fact, it doesn't matter. We're already done. You'll all see. You'll all see. Just enjoy. Because the whole third world's collapsing. They're going to collapse it into the West, and it's going to go bottom up. Then they're going to seal the borders entirely and bring in a police state. I mean, it's amazing. But not before enough are brought in to divide and conquer. This is how we're being taken over. Well, Bill Clinton says all our problems are because of guns. You just can't, quote, have people walking around with guns unless it's the globalists, unless it's the UN. I'm going to play that clip again and then tie it in with some very important clips from Hillary Clinton and her announcement yesterday. But here's Dianne Feinstein saying if she had the votes, she'd ban all your guns. Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in case there's any doubt. We have this from the NRA, GOA, and others. They're warming up for another assault on our guns. They're coming. Let's go to that clip.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it. I could not do that. The votes weren't
all right. So as soon as they get the votes, that is the plan. Now, let's go back to Bill Clinton. You can't have people walking around with guns talking about Baltimore as if that's what caused this. It was cops shooting people in a questionable fashion or breaking somebody's neck. It's police brutality that at least is what the White House is stirring up to cause the clash so the feds can come in and take over. It's that simple. Al Sharpton admits that. Should I play the clip again of him saying we need to federalize all the police? But he then makes it about gun owners and ties that to when we did Serbia. I guess you did do Serbia like the mafia does somebody in. You're talking about a government that you attacked. So now even governments can't have guns. The West came in and armed the Croats, armed the Muslims, had them attack the Serbs. This is on record. The Serbs fought back, won, and so NATO came in and took them over. Just like you've got the West funding Al-Qaeda and ISIS to attack Syria right now, and they're calling Syria the bad guys until the public didn't buy it, and they went, oh, you're right. The bad guys are Al-Qaeda and ISIS. We've got to go in and take over and get rid of Assad so that we control the country and not him. As if he's behind it. It's sick. Here's Bill Clinton.
What's killing all these communities is that everybody thinks every tomorrow is going to be like yesterday. You're toast.
Back it up, please.
You can deal with poverty.
I can't believe after 20 years on air, I still have to deal with the Clintons. I mean, I started my talk radio show in 1996, started on TV in 95, when these guys had just carried out Oklahoma City. And I'm not going to do a whole show on that. I've been in films on it, made a film on it, done countless shows, had the police officers on that were there and witnessed it. I mean, that was a government operation, a criminal element of the government. We know the names, everything. And just to have to, I care about you so much. You just can't have these lives being lost. I care so much about lives. And the headline on CNN yesterday was, Bill Clinton brushes off foundation questions. Their foundation getting money from third world dictators to be taken off the State Department list so weapons can be shipped there. I mean, you pay Hillary money, you pay Bill money, and then she's at the State Department and lets weapons go to your country. Let's go back to that quote. It's just hard to listen to Pumpkinhead. Here it is.
What's killing all these communities is that everybody thinks every tomorrow is going to be like yesterday. You're toast. You can deal with poverty, adversity, anything, as long as they think it could be different. The Baltimore thing came on the heels of what happened in Ferguson and what happened in New York City and all these other places. And there's a big national movement about whether the lives of young African-American men count. You know,
hashtag Black Lives Matter, yeah.
Yeah. You can't have a bunch of people walking around with guns. I used to tell people when we did Bosnia, Kosovo, anything like that, you get enough people with weapons around and there will be unintended consequences. People will make mistakes. People will do wrong. Things happen. To hold a community together, you've got to have a high level of community trust. If somebody that's in your family gets shot, you want an answer from somebody you know. And you want to be able to ask questions and get them answered.
This is truly sickening. They had police officers, citizens, teenagers murdered who knew about the drug dealing in Mina. And he sits up there talking about how much he loves everybody when he turned Al-Qaeda loose in the Balkans. And then blew up the infrastructure, killing tens of thousands and dropping depleted uranium cluster bombs on Belgrade. Unprecedented. A war criminal. A liar. And he's up there explaining to us why there's problems with guns in America. But, you know, something he said is true in a twisted way. You can't have armies quartered amongst you. You know, that's in the Bill of Rights. You can't have a heavily armed, huge paramilitary force in your country. You will end up having problems. In every third world nation, the military or the paramilitary police end up taking over. Stability and confidence is destroyed. The country collapses forever. Latin America, look at it. No success stories. All because of their standing armies. That's why our founders in 1776 and forward said no standing army. We can have a navy. We can have an army that's put on ships. We can have Marines. That's how the Marines get around Posse Comitatus, even though it's an 1878 law. The Marines operating predates that. You can control your borders. You can have a navy. And in modern parlance, you can have an army. But you do not station it or use it domestically ever. And by the way, the Founding Fathers didn't invent that. The Dutch had that on the books. The Swiss had that on the books. Look how successful they've been. And where did they get it? Well, you guys search when, I know it was 40-something years BC, 40-something years before the birth of Christ. Will you please give me the year Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon? Just type in the crossing of the Rubicon, the date that happened. You see, the Romans, for 200 plus years, it was an execution offense for a general to lead his armies south into northern Italy, across the Rubicon, basically close to the border with what's Austria today. And if a soldier, unless it was a parade, wore their uniform, they could get in big trouble. Because you don't suit up the troops inside the country. Duh! Nowadays, this Jones guy's crazy. He doesn't like troops marching up and down the streets everywhere and running checkpoints and working with police and admitting they're preparing to take on the Tea Party in army times. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, 49 BC. The crossing of a small stream in northern Italy became one of the ancient history's most pivotal events. They went from republic to dictatorship. Caesar became synonymous with king. Continuing with the quote, from it sprang the Roman Empire and the genesis of modern European culture. So there you go. Julius Caesar crosses the Rubicon. The genesis of European culture, it began to collapse Western culture into a dark age that lasted over 1,000 plus years. It took 400 plus years for Rome to degenerate to its final sacking in 410 by the Visigoths. I've got Shaquille O'Neal's personal cell phone number, and we're going to call him live on the air coming up in the next segment. We tested it a few days ago. I'd kind of forgotten about it because it's not that big deal basketball player. And I'm going to call him up on air and ask him about it. If he has any concern about crimes being committed inside this country, probably just hang up on us, but we'll see what happens. Of course, he came out last week whenever someone on his Facebook working for him questioned 9/11 and said he was going to fire whoever did it. I'm going to ask him if he knows about the 27 pages or 28 pages that have been made secret of the 9/11 Commission showing Saudi Arabia basically quarterbacked the operation. Just like they're quarterbacking the attack on Syria right now. And just you might want to rethink firing whoever did that. But I'll guarantee you they gave directives to act edgy and act like he's involved with the community and then he doesn't like where it went. Those companies you hire to do that, I've researched them, try to follow a profile you give them. And if we can hijack popular culture, we'll do it all day long. Try to get folks out of the matrix. Coming up, I'm going to play these sickening Hillary quotes about how she's for the little guy and wants to fight the oligarchs and the robber barons, basically. I mean, this is really getting rich because the big money's behind her. Bilderberg had her campaign head at the meeting. She's been to Bilderberg. Nobody else was there from the Republican camp or the Democratic camp. That means that's who they're looking to push. She was at Bilderberg in 2008. I was there covering it. We saw the armored cars go in. We saw the Secret Service. They were all over the news saying, where's Hillary? Where's Obama? We knew where they were. And we later confirmed they were inside. Well, again, it's an inside job, folks. Rigging it by controlling the field. And the media is now telling us it's Jeb Bush and Hillary. They're the choices you have. Meanwhile, UN Human Rights Chief urges Europe to accept more migrants. I mentioned this, but I'm going to play the audio and video for TV viewers. I'll narrate for radio listeners. The video's up on Infowars.com. It's also on DrudgeReport.com. Shock video, rioting migrants attempt to hijack truck headed for the UK. The footage filmed in the French port town of Calais shows desperate migrants attempting to break into delivery trucks. Well, what's wrong with breaking into things? That's okay. They released 36,000 violent illegals just this year in the U.S., but they got a manhunt for 2 guys that broke out of a state prison. That's okay. Heading to the United Kingdom in another illustration of how the country's Generous welfare system acts as a beacon for illegal aliens.